ठीक है ठीक है भैया, इसको मैंने ऑन कर दिया है।
All right. So that's a pleasant surprise, Pratish. I was not prepared for the recording stuff,
Neither was
but
I.
it's good. But it's good. Well, whatever it is, right? So very first thing is I'm loving this, right? Whatever implementation has been done, I've seen this chart before, but the way it is coming out on screen now, absolutely top class, right? And I might have spent more than couple of hours, right, since it has been published, just looking at it, so going through the companies which I haven't explored before, right, and seeing कि अभी क्या दिखता है इसका chart, right, and loving it. So yeah, thanks for doing it, right, and it's for the guys like me, और आप भी देखते हो ये सब काफी टाइम से, जिसको उनको बहुत मजा आ रहा है, राइट, ये देखने में, बिकॉज इतने टाइम की हिस्टोरिकल डेटा से काफी चीजें पता चलती है, राइट. What I used to love seeing this is trying to find a pattern, right? Ki some of the companies command high PE or high valuation, forget PE, right? High valuation, and where is this valuation coming from? Obviously, one is terminal value is high and all those things, but second aspect is the consistency in performance. Right. So the performance over here is what we call it as margin le lo abhi, because that's what the focus area today is. And the examples like Britannia, I just love that margin chart, right? And I mean, slow and steady improvement in margins over a period of time, starting from 2015 or 16 onwards, and keep on happening. And we still don't know whether we have reached the peak or not, right? A similar performance seen in Asian Paints and similar performance seen in a couple of other companies, जिसको बोला जाता है कि भाई इतना PI कुछ कुछ तो है इसमें, but well देख लो कुछ है, consistency है, right, in performance. That's the reason those are darlings on the street, right? So those were the one area, but naturally we don't as a value investor and value picker team members, हम ऐसी company में invest तो नहीं करते, but we try to find pattern from there, right? So those were the kind of patterns, right? And then we're trying to apply that कि ये सब चीजें हमें जो पसंद आता है, जहाँ वैल्यू है वहां पे ये सब अप्लाई कर पाएंगे क्या? So then comes the companies which were on our radar, we were invested and may not be invested at this point of time. Those companies क्या कर रही है from this aspect only. Example was Astral ले लो, right? गरवारे पॉलीमर्स ले ले, गरवारे टेक्निकल फाइबर्स ले लेते हैं, राइट, और इन सब के चार्ट्स जब देखते हैं, राइट, रिलैक्सो का चार्ट, राइट, परफॉर्मेंस, राइट, ये सब जब देखते हैं ना, तब पता चलता है कि oh god, right, see this, right, the thing that was working in Britannia and has been working in Britannia and couple of other companies, same is happening over here, right? ये सब companies में भी इतनी consistency है and market is rewarding them, right? So this consistency aspect, less number of surprises aspect is important, right? फिर अपनी companies like PI industry जहाँ invested हम होते हैं, वहां पे भी दिखता है, right? ठीक है, इतना flat curve नहीं होता, ऊपर नीचे थोड़ा होता है, but still to an extent very much similar to the charts of other well-known companies, right? So that is aspect number one, right, which is finding consistent compounder. मेहनत कम करने के लिए कि एक बार अंदर आ गए तो we can ride it little longer. That is the aim for, right, primary aim for which this data or chart I find it useful, right? There are multiple reasons, but this is the primary reason, right? कि ऐसा कुछ ढूंढते हैं जो चलता रहेगा, right, with the consistency, right, even though the growth is little bit
there isn't much volatility in margins.
Yeah, there isn't much volatility, right? Even if the growth इतना नहीं होता, फिर भी just the consistency aspect is gonna be considered by the market, right? That's the assumption or the feeling with which this was being used. Point number one. Point number two was opportunistic bets, right? जहाँ पे because we ultimately want to make money, right? Not just we don't just want to compounders in our portfolio. So opportunistic bets में this was coming out quite handy in the sense that काफी बार ऐसा होता है कि we could the chart would say कि previous, I mean now we are talking about YOY, right? So of three bars before, right, because we would be anticipating the fourth bar, right? So 3 bars before the margins were depressed, right? The sales was down, right? And generally this does not remain longer. और ये depressed period इन्होंने तीन quarter से ऐसा ही रहा है depressed, right? And now probably the time has come based on some fundamental aspect, some news has changed or some event has happened because of it, some certain change is going to happen. तो वहां पे दिख जाता था कि base इतना लो है कि इसके ऊपर ग्रोथ करना इसको तकलीफ नहीं होगी, right? And it would be able to show the YOY improvement not just for this quarter, but since the last 3 quarters are having similar low base, probably we could ride for 1, 2, 3 quarters depending upon how things go, and it's an opportunistic bet, right? You enter, your valuation is in our favor, and just ride it for short time. So similar such example was Avanti, right? Where after having that superb margin improvement, right? After that it had gone down, right? और वो कुछ ज़्यादा ही down हो गया था, right? And that's when that base formation happened after a year, right? So it was this chart was clearly showing कि यार एक साल हो गया उसको तो, right? And now things are gonna get back to normal, right? So even the normal doesn't mean it's gonna go to peak, right? But the normal is little more than what it has gone down, right? And the season was उसकी जो regular Q1 Q2 वाला time था वही time आ गया था जहाँ पे ये ठीक होने वाला था. So it was very easy to pick from Avanti, right? Similar, right, live example I could sense is in KRBL, right? A B, right? Where हाँ?
आप स्क्रीन शेयरिंग कर लो तो उस पे एक बार खोल लेते तो मेरे ख्याल और अच्छा पता लगेगा.
Okay, let me open that.
स्क्रीन शेयर का नीचे ऑप्शन आ रहा होगा.
Sure, but मेरे इतने विंडोज ओपन है ना प्रत्युष के I'm gonna take out one.
हाँ.
And give me a second before I set up, and then I will share. Okay, setup done, and I will share the KRBL thing.
Great. पहले एक बार अवंती देखते हैं, जस्ट पहले एक उससे बेस समझ आ जाए.
Right. Very first, फटाफट एक बार we will go through. Actually, we should have done this before, right? But let's do this. So super duper chart, right? कुछ बोलने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. The slow and steady gradual improvement. This is Britannia, right? But similar would be Relaxo without getting into it, right? Similar would be Asian Paint, right? But what we see is कि हम जहाँ invest करते थे Astral में और वहाँ पे भी ऐसा दिखा, right? So let me make it a little bigger so that it's visible and change some of the aspect. Okay, so give me a second because I changed the zoom, so फिर से करना पड़ेगा मुझे. Right. To an extent, right? Quite consistency, right? To an extent, Relaxo maybe you would be able to see, right? Quite consistency over here, right? So those were the ones, yeah, very one. So that's but we will now go. This is the consistent ones, compounder ones. But we'll go to what we call opportunistic, right? So Avanti, right? And in Avanti, let's go to GeoMax. We go to performance. Okay, so here is what we know. What we know that this is ये तो sustain करना मुश्किल था, right? But ये जब खत्म हुआ था, right? And at that point of time, when it is gone to the bottom, right? And यहाँ bottom बनने के बाद, right? जब ऊपर जाने की कोशिश हो रही थी, right? Particularly this is the month, right? That's when you could start saying कि पिछले 4 खत्म हो गए हैं, right? Over here, right? 4 खत्म हो गए हैं, and now is the time that the base is low for quite some time, and it's a good time to ride for at least couple of quarters sitting over here, right? So that's what Avanti was quite of saying. निकल गया base से, the low portion is low. We have a low portion in base, right? Let me show it in KRBL, right? What I sense is, and I could be wrong, but I think it's we are having something like that. Okay. So what we are going to see is a little. This is June. This is our September, right? So in September, more than low base here, margin isn't low much, right? Margin से नहीं खेलने का, it's not an opportunity to play with margin, but still the margin is low, right? Relatively, right? Not very low, right? But what we could see is this is absolutely low base from the top line perspective, right? And generally September isn't this bad, right? This was exceptionally kuch gadbad hai idhar, right? Which might be one off, right? And now when we start seeing uski presentation, because this is just the trigger कि हमें कुछ आगे study करना है, and we start seeing आगे study करने में कि what's happening, then there's previous September's presentation is saying कि there was quite a big dip in export. I don't know for what reason, but drastic dip presentation में दिख ही रहा है, right? Some 300 crore kind of dip, right? So that was quite indicative कि वो तो एक बार dip है, हमेशा ऐसा नहीं होने वाला है इनका, right? So that's an opportunity, live opportunity that I sense, right? Plus यहाँ जब quarterly conf call देखते हैं ना, तो यहाँ management is saying that spillover has happened. We were ready to do something, shipments हमारे ready थे, but हम कर नहीं पाए, and a lot of big quantities, some 300 crore plus has been spill over to the next quarter, right? So what we could see over here is कि base से तो better margin की opportunity है, right? And the top line is also so low that there is some opportunistic chance over here. Well, KRBL is valuation wise also quite attractive, but we are discussing just the opportunistic bet over here, right? So that is another such example, right? And this is key, we have to keep on doing it, right? At least I try to do it कि ध्यान में रखते हैं कि कुछ पीछे ऐसा हो गया क्या, base slow हो गया क्या, low हो गया, right? Maybe let's look at Shivalik, I don't right? Because यहाँ पे भी शायद हो गया होगा एक साल वाला base low, right? Yeah, exactly. Right. So right. So we have been invested, and the pain has been, the margin pain has been there since 1 year, right? So who knows, right? At least gross margin improve हुआ चालू हुआ है, right? And if right, everything falls in place, the margin may have reached, we can't say with certainty in Shivalik case, right? But margin may have bottomed out, right? और थोड़ा वापस उसकी normal range में आने की chances है, right? So because of the way we see it, right? Because this is our September से ही नीचे गया था, right? So
like low of like last 5-6 years, इतना low margins of PM नहीं है.
Correct. Right. So again, this so Shivalik is not more than, it's between compounder and opportunistic, but still, right? An example, right? And what are other examples? What is the other purpose? So we covered two purpose, right? Third,
in KRBL, जैसे आप margins को उसमें कैसे interpret करोगे? They are on the upper side, दो दी मतलब
we are little bit on upper side, right? I can't say that this is the absolute low margin, not in KRBL case, because margin can this abhi ka margin is high, right? And this high margin may not sustain, but there is a chance that even if it goes little dip, right, the base jitna to dip nahi jayega, base se to upar hoga, YOY wale base se. That's what the point is, right? Right. So yeah, so that is those are two second aspect, which is opportunistic. Third is coming out of opportunistic aspect or coming out of compounders for a time being, right? जरूरत नहीं है कि permanently invested रहे, right? That's the whole aspect, right? That temporarily, if we are seeing कि margins or earnings have reached not peak, I would say, but have reached a stage where it is not that easy to grow on top of that, right? Then graph is going to tell that, something like that, right? So how to take that example? Let me think. Let's take Vinati, right? It's a very nice chart. So people discuss chart from stock price perspective. We will discuss from performance perspective. When we say chart, it's performance chart. Okay, right? So okay, so this is actually a fantastic chart. Okay, but यहाँ पे जब you have to think it like this, right? That up move was going from here, right? यहाँ से यहाँ तक उसको up move was fantastic growth, right? But after reaching this stage, right, more or less one could see that the sales growth has stopped, right? Margin expansion has stopped, right? That doesn't mean company is bad, not at all, right? That means that it's a time to and management was in the commentary also were saying, right? Blah 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 event is happening and something or other was happening, and whatsoever they were planned, PPAP ka plan tha, that didn't happen, right? Some of the other there was headwind in their ATBS product and all those aspects, right? Their commentary was started to becoming a little subdued at that point of time, right? So even though it was a darling of market here, right? But then at least performance chart was saying it ye bahut mushkil hai, right? And then something like that actually happened, right? Was not able to sustain that margin, right? At least from the OPM perspective, right? NPM maybe keep on growing because of the tax benefit and XYZ, right? तो भी इतना deep नहीं आया because the quality of earning is it's so good over here, right? But what I'm trying to indicate is here was the time where just looking at this, I was I mean I love this company, right? I track it, right, because of the quality of earning, but I was able to a little bit come not little bit but fully come out at this point of time, right? Because that this is the point where you even if you love the company, you can temporarily come out, right? So just based on what you are seeing over here, right? Growth top line atak gayi or margin baad mein sustain karna mushkil hai, right? And then come back again, right? And here is a risk, you may not be able to come back. It is mere sath to aisa hota hai, right? Some good companies I come out and then it would be very difficult to come back, right? And yeah, that's a risk with which we do this in and out stuff, right? But that's a part and parcel of investing, right? So that's one example, right? A similar live example I could see is in Alkyl, right, where it has been a good performer, right? But what is this chart saying us, right? Right, chart is saying us that their top line growth अटक गई है, right? And कब तक margin expansion चलेगा, right? ये तो कभी भी right? It's like what Vinati was, what we were discussing at a stage, right? This is very close to that stage, right? But over here, because iski product ki acetonitrile prices are still quite I mean very rich, I would say, not a little bit rich, very rich still, I think, right? And that's the reason ये margin शायद चल भी जाए एक quarter दो quarter, but it's matter of time, right? And this is from the margin perspective, then the stock the stock might take a little pause, right? Whenever that happens, right? Is the feeling. So what because we are discussing live examples, my trimming has started in Alkyla means, right? And more than 25% or 30% I've already trimmed, and yeah, this is on my radar that further trimming would continue, right? We need money to invest somewhere else as well, right? so this is how I use it, Pratyush, right? Um, three different purpose, right? They're all coming out from performance chart, right? All have a different meaning.
Nice. Bhaiya has also joined in, so Bhaiya is
hey, hi Ayush.
Hi Sandeep.
Hi.
Very informative insights. I just had a quick question. Like when we see gross margins expanding over the years, is that a very powerful takeaway and something to focus on?
And
in these last two cases, we see that gross margins have continued to expand, and even though the sales are a bit subdued, is it that this is the reason why market gives them more time and leeway that okay, growth will happen sometime or the later, but expanding gross margins and maintenance of those high gross margins is something rare to happen at a high scale?
Absolutely. Market is so very smart, right? And when it starts sensing that value addition is happening in this company, right? And how is value addition? We could see that through gross margin, right? One of the aspect, not the only aspect, certainly, right? But that's very strong aspect, right? And if that is happening, market does give long rope, right? Even for a couple of quarters, it gives long rope, right? So yeah, definitely yes, Ayush. I was that is quite visible. But Garwar check karte hai, right? And Yeah, from starting from we can say 2015 onwards, right? All they are doing is value addition, value addition, value addition, right? From 60 to 75%, right? Slowly and steadily, right? But
Yeah.
yep, that's the one, right?
So is it what I'm also thinking is that gross margin expansion also happens due to cyclicality, and that is where the differentiation happens. Perhaps that some companies where the gross margins expand, but market doesn't believe that this is sustainable. Those may be the short term. Uh, uh, they will do well, but they will come back. While there are very few
Correct.
companies which can maintain and increase gross margins over long periods of time. For example, we can check maybe Polymedicure, and that is one company where I've seen the maintenance of margins and improvement over a long period of time. And as they have continued, market has only re-rated their stock over the years.
Absolutely, Ayush. Right, and this is called stability, right? I mean, we say that there is a little bit of cyclicality and crude related, but gross margin is telling another story, right? It is saying that yeah, this company is able to maintain whatever it has achieved 4 years back, right? Absolutely, right. And then the OPM going a little bit up is operating leverage kicking in, right? So
Great.
yep,
Great.
and it's rare to find such some first of all it's rare to find such a 70% gross margin business, right? And when we find it and it remains stable for so many years, oh boss, this is going to create value, right? Because we are discussing this number, right? This absolute number is so equally important, right? Because the value is starting from here, right? So Hester, right? I mean, इसकी तो कोग सी क्या है भाई right? We can so it's really interesting to see this, right? Look at this, right? And 93.47% gross margin, right? But that's understandable, that's the nature of business, right? And that's the reason this is so amazing. This kind of dip may be there for temporary dip or whatever, right? But the nature of business says ये value create करेगी, right?
Yeah, and over the years, this is what I've learned the hard way, that there are very few companies which have very good gross margins, profitability, and if they can
Correct.
grow on it,
Right.
then
Right.
markets they become the favorites and they get very very high PE multiple. Maybe one of your
Right.
favorites, Suven Pharma, will fall into this category.
Oh,
Maybe so.
absolutely.
We don't have a
Absolutely.
very long data, but
Right.
yeah,
And yeah, over here, obviously, because of this demerger and all those things, we don't have
yeah,
long,
yeah. We
we
don't have
don't
a
use
long
data.
data.
But this company is in such a place where it's rare to see 45% OPM margin, right? And the gap between the gross margin and OPM margin, I also pay a little bit of attention over there, right? So this to me indirectly says that the maximum put it other way, right? If the gap is narrow, right, I sense that maybe that may not be the right interpretation, but what I sense is that the chance of further narrowing this is not possible, right? Because there would be some expenses, right, that has already been factored out, and the gap is already so narrowed. But we don't discuss this a lot, but if I go to Alembic, right, and if I see this, मुझे तो ये जो gap है ना, बहुत बड़ा gap दिखता है, right, between 80 to 30. And this tells me that the day this company, right, starts reducing this gap, people are worried about this coming down, right? The gross profit coming down. But I'm looking an opportunity over here, right? Right, that this, even if this gross margin comes down, but look at this gap, यहाँ कितनी efficiency build कर सकती है company, right? That R&D expense or whatever that is going out between from this gap, and some or other day this gap is going to reduce, right? They have not yet start reducing it, and when that reduced, right, the bottom line impact is going to be super duper, right?
Wow. See, like this is a
Right.
wonderful
But
information that in case there's a huge gap, there's an opportunity where OPM can further rise. Even if the GPM falls, the OPM
right,
can rise further up, because in that case they can reduce their R&D expense or other expenses which can lead to better
Yeah.
margins.
Right. And this is the similar thing is, let's see, I've not checked it that way, but we can see that, right? So OFC does, right? Because this was a stage where there is a gap, right? A decent amount of gap. And what is happening in Laura's? That gap is reducing, right? We call it operating margin at play, but that is what it is, right? Ultimately, right? बट गैप
Excellent.
होगा तो रिड्यूस होगा, राइट? सुएन में वो गैप नहीं है, राइट? सो वो चांसेस नहीं है सुएन में, राइट? बट एनीवे द क्वालिटी ऑफ अर्निंग इन सुएन इज सो गुड दैट वो मेंटेन कर लेना जो भी है तो भी बहुत है, राइट?
I think what you're saying is also something like what we see in so many companies which do heavy advertising to start with, like the FMCG companies. They have a
Right.
very high gross margin. Initially, they
Right.
spend a lot of money into advertising, capturing the market, and
Right.
one doesn't see it in the numbers. But once they achieve scale, all those numbers come in. So
Right.
people who are able to visualize this, like
Right.
I think this happened in Amazon. On the earning basis, it never showed up earlier, but
Mhm.
as they got to that scale, the
Mhm.
other line items start reducing, and one gets the numbers that
Absolutely.
justify.
Right. Right. So now all this is possible with a click at a screener. I'm loving it. Right. But I was not able to maintain the बहुत सारी company का, maybe around 150 companies was on my radar. That's what I was used to maintain, right? Maybe 25 I might have posted on Value Picker, but that it was I mean it's not possible to do it for 4,000 companies, and now it's there for 4,000 companies. So amazing. That's what is giving me a lot of happiness. Right? कि सब जगह देख पाएंगे अभी.
Nice. Bhaiya, you were talking about key financial companies with जैसे there the gross margin line becomes straight, so there is a better substitute for this.
Right. So let's start with Bajaj Finance, right? And because I was invested and was loving this, right? But absolutely, the chart wise, right? Nothing wrong. Absolutely top class, right? And first time the little dip happens over here, right? But what about gross margin? We want to discuss that, right? इसमें तो obviously gross margin flat दिखेगी. But in my chart also, if I use the same template, it used to come out flat, right? Because of the nature of formula, right? Then I did some tweak, and it's absolutely a tweak jiski little bit insight I started taking from here, right? Let me put it down. Okay, so the financing margins, the day Screener introduced this financing margin, right? That day it helped me start thinking that ye must hai, right? This is something we could use for financial leverage wali in companies, and at that point of time I was into NBFCs big time, so I was able to use this in NBFC companies, which is Bajaj Finance and XYZ, right? But what I feel is, what is this financing margin? Basically it's a OPM minus interest, right? That's what it is, right? And then you convert that into percentage, right? And that's what this percentage is coming, right? Because OPM percentage doesn't make any sense. OPM percentage does not have interest, right? Interest OPM के बाहर है, तो ये आपने अंदर लेके आ गए आप, which I loved it, right? But यही चीज so instead of, so what I did very first thing, मैंने chart में OPM निकाल दिया, right? Because OPM is useless, right? And OPM की जगह पे financial margin डाल दिया, right? That okay, एक replacement तो मिल गया, right? So now was कि gross margin का replacement चाहिए, right? तो उसका आंसर भी आपकी फॉर्मूला से ही आया, right? कि ultimately gross margin है क्या, right? COGS को माइनस करना है, right? तो financial companies का COGS क्या है, right? Interest, right? वही उसका COGS है, right? Then I mean, not 100% true. And people, I mean, this is not a textbook thing. This is purely how I wanted to use charts, right? So that's where all I did was sales में से interest minus कर दिया, right? Sales में से जब COGS minus करते हैं तो gross margin मिलता है, तो COGS is interest thinking, right? और बाद में जो चीज मिली, that become the gross margin, right? And that's where I was able to draw the charts for Bajaj Finance, right? Just interest portion minus करना है, right? And well, the chart started making sense, right? it started making sense for Canfin. It started making sense for Repco and all those companies. And I thought that, chalo, theek hai, ye ban raha hai. I cannot publish this or talk about this because ye to kya hai, maine khud ka kuch tukka lagaya hua hai. But chart was showing it. It was nicely showing it. Ki efficiency kaise build ho rahi hai. Ki aapki interest income, again, we are talking about the gap, right? Because we now want to focus on the gap between gross margin and operating margin. In this particular case, the gross margin and the finance margin, right? Those gaps and all those things was now visible. Bajaj Finance की story was quite visible कि वो gap को narrow कर रहे थे, right? जितना हो सकता था वो narrow कर रहे थे, और narrow कर रहे थे तो efficiency आ रही थी धीरे धीरे, right? And all that, that's the reason we were able to see कि disproportionate growth हो रही थी Bajaj Finance में. हाँ होगी, right? क्योंकि interest outflow के बाद what was happening was financing margin was pushing up, right, little bit, right, and that's the gap which was visible. I could share very gandhi spreadsheet hai, right, but let me see. I can share that, sure, right, if it's open. Yeah.
Great. भैया भाई आपने थोड़ा बाद में ज्वाइन किया, तो शुरुआत में हम लोग पहले वही डिस्कस करते थे कि मतलब मार्केट पेज अ लॉट फॉर कंसिस्टेंसी, की जैसे ब्रिटानिया और इन सब में था, उन सब के चार्ट में खास बात थी वही कि मार्जिन्स वर वेरी कंसिस्टेंट, सो इवन इफ देयर वाज नो ग्रोथ, market never punished them just because of consistency.
Totally agree. And when in such companies markets understand that the growth is happening, huge re-rating happens. And these companies are able to, like Sandeep shared, that gross margin gets converted into higher profitability. That happens with scale. So it's a magic that happens, and हम लोग कई बार लगे रहते हैं कि कम P चाहिए, but P doesn't matter. The kind of value addition that happens in these kind of companies when they are growing is huge.
Right. Okay, so we want to see Bajaj Finance, right? So this is my ugly spreadsheet, right, which I maintain, right? But yeah, the
more beautiful.
Right, but okay, so Bajaj Finance, this is what it is, right? The gross margin, right, is nothing but interest minus kar diya, aur kuch nahi hai. Okay. Right, that's how we got this, right? And this orange line is absolutely the financial margin, right, on screener ka. But see this, right? ये क्या हो रहा था? Gross margin stable थी, right? ये gap reduce हो रही है, right? Sales बढ़ रही है और ये gap reduce हो रही है, and we were seeing from here constantly कि oh disproportionate growth है होगी, right? Right, because this was what was happening, and little bit alertness आ गई थी, right? That doesn't mean we were able to exit at the right time, but यहाँ पे, right, what was happening, it started showing कि अभी जितना squeeze होना था हो गया, right, and it's not able to squeeze anymore, right, and actually उल्टा जाने लगा था little bit, though the top line growth is going on, ये little उल्टा जाना start हो गया था, right. And not a red flag at all, right, because there is so much of efficiency in the business and everything, but at least जो easy money था ना, right, bottom line पे hit हो रहा था, वो easy money निकल गया था, right, and then little hard work was required. So yeah, that's how it started helping me in Bajaj Finance. Canfin जब एक time पे अपने we all were invested, right, and we're riding this company, right, and similar chart if we draw it for Canfin, right, what it shows, right, ye stage, right, this is the time when I forgot his name, the value picker guy whom I actually love. He was from the finance industry, and he has written a lot many messages on Canfin. Bad. He moved to Goa, right? Become full-time investor. We know exactly, right? We know that, right? We know the MS, right? And he had amazing control over this finance companies, right? And well, he actually he and Hitesh Bhai started writing over here. Look at this! What a time, right? And from there we are seeing all this good super duper chart, right? and इनको तो squeeze भी नहीं करना पड़ रहा था, right? Because just the gross margin, equivalent of gross margin, was rising so very nicely, right? And then we could see that it reaching peak and a little bit coming down, and then it was not difficult to exit, right? If you are having some of these charts like this, ठीक है यार, अच्छा period था, वो easy चला गया, right? Now it's hard work. right? So yeah, it's the same thing, right? Chart converted into something which makes sense or not, I don't know. Right.
Nice.
Okay. So I will stop the share.
Great.
Pretty interesting.
But I haven't applied this in bank. So let me be very honest, because bank would be having lot many things. It's not just a NBFC, just a vanilla stuff. So it might not work in bank, right? But yeah, it worked in a company which is purely interested in and interest out kind of stuff.
Wow. मजा आ गई यार, बहुत ही अच्छा था. और कुछ
Yeah.
भाई, मतलब we can cover it और कुछ.
मजा मुझे आ गया.
नहीं.
So Pratyush, keep doing this super duper work, right? And amazing, right? The way you are bringing in new features. Not just this, the product segment. I want to take this opportunity and say that product segment, because I used to maintain that for some of the companies, right? Oh man, you are actually making me free, right? And when I say me, it's all investors. हम सबका time बचा रहे हो, right? And वो कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Just click and the data is over there, right?
Keep sharing the insights.
That idea also originated from you when you shared one of your Excel sheet in which you showcased me wherein how this segment is earning very high ROC. I think it was Iron Exchange or something, wherein you showcased that one of these segment is so consistent and it earns more than 30% ROC for so long.
Right.
So how to easily spot it, and perhaps that is where the inspiration came, and that product segment came into Spina. Yeah.
All good. Right. Super. Right.
Super.
Screener.
Great, guys. Yeah.
Okay. Chaliye then. Right. Enjoyed. Right.
Bye.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.